everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope it's going well. This is going to be the astro weather for October 22nd through the 29th, 2023. Well, guys, we've got eclipse week, right? We're ready for the next one that's going to be coming later this week. We've got a number of things that are going on, and I'm really excited to kind of get into this and talk to you about why this is such a significant turning point. The astrology this week is just wild. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name's Candice. I'm an evolutionary and a Western astrologer. I like to work with the Sabian symbols as well as tarot to better understand what's going on in the cosmos. If you like my content and you want to see more, click the bell button below so you're alerted as to when I have new videos coming out on the channel. We're putting out videos pretty much almost every other day. There's all kinds of eclipse stuff and horoscopes. So make sure you click that bell button so you can see what's going on. Well, let's just get right into it. I have a whole presentation for you guys today. I want to first touch on some of the major themes for this week before getting into the day by day. Obviously, you guys clicked on the video and you saw that it says Mercury enters Scorpio. But really for me, this whole week is about the pursuit of truth. So many planets moving into Scorpio, obviously perfect energy to be going and digging deep to get facts and information. We've got a reactivation that's going to be taking place as planets hit 29 degrees of Libra. We are reactivating the 2022 Venus star point. So I think that's pretty significant. This reactivation at 29 degrees of Libra is bringing up themes revolving around turning points in relationships. So if you guys look back at October 2022, actually the 22nd, okay, that's a lot of twos, but October 22nd, 2022, that's when the new Venus star point was born, where Venus was pulling in front of the sun and it had a cazimi in the last moments of Libra. Now, I want to read to you guys the Sabian symbol for this first, because I feel like this is just going to like set the stage for the rest of the things that I'm going to be discussing, because we're going to talk about 29 degrees today, why it's so significant in astrology, and why there's so many 29s taking place this week. All right, so if you guys have the Sabian symbol book, if you don't, you should. You guys can find my book list below in the description. This is page 242, and I will be reading for you guys Libra 30 because we round up, okay? Okay, so Libra 30, 3 mounds of knowledge on a philosopher's head. The keyword is prescience. The theme is the prophet. The symbol speaks to the fact that life is a life, symbol speaks to the fact that life is made to be. And when man understands the principle of cosmic order, he can see that at work in his life and use it to direct his affairs. The image of the 3 mounds of knowledge on a philosopher's head challenges the seeker to develop his physical, emotional, and intellectual faculties, or his skills and ideals in equal measure. In doing so, he comes to comprehend the basic workings and cause and effect of the interrelatedness of all things. Thus, he is able to anticipate or predict the future. At its highest, it represents prophetic genius, psychological wholeness, self-integration. Watch for excessive reliance on intellectual solutions at the expense of the spiritual or humanitarian concerns. The accent is on intuition and insight. You may have a startling realization that causes you to make a change of some kind in the way that you've been doing something. Your greatest advantage lies in using more than one tool or technique to accomplish your goal. Pay attention to things that seem out of the ordinary. A change is being forecast that you need to prepare for. Guard against missing an important message by focusing too narrowly in one direction. Don't rationalize away your psychic perceptions. Stepping stones are well-roundedness, self-integration, wisdom, vision, foresight, perception, judgment, precognition, clairvoyance, and genius. All right. So if you guys follow the degree theory, 29 degrees does have associations and connections to Leo. But Nicola always believed that 29 degrees had a sense of like psychicness, right? And there's something to be said about natal 29 degrees placements. I'm sure if you guys have them, you'll see that that's like that area in your life where you just have that extra oomph or that inner knowing. But especially when I think about this being in Libra, because it's an air sign and it's cardinal. So it's very intellectual in communicating and talking and rationalizing things. And that 29 degrees of Libra is the tipping point where we're completing Libra and we're getting ready to dive deep into Scorpio's kind of realm. And that does require intuition. It does require a sense of foresight or crystal balls or intuition, tarot cards, because that's kind of going into the unknown. Anyway, 29 degrees, I think here is really kind of talking about, you know, a strong desire to understand something, to learn something, to share something, but also it's about tapping into wisdom that cannot always be rationalized. So I think that that's probably what we're going to be dealing with throughout this next week or so. Like I said, the activation is also important because it's going to be making oppositions to the, where's my marker? To the eclipse that we had in April. Okay, so if you guys remember April, it was like the third week of April, we had a 29-degree solar eclipse in Aries. Now we have Mercury that just left Libra. We've got the sun that's coming to 29 degrees. That is the opposition point to this, and it's reactivating the Venus star point. So there's so much emphasis on this 29 degrees. Now, some will also say that the 29 degrees, the anaretic degree, can feel like a crisis, okay? It can feel like something is ending, something needs to wrap up. When in reality, I think it's a turning point. At least in evolutionary astrology, we see this as completing a lesson and finally moving through the lessons within that sign. So when we think of all the 9 degrees of Libra, if 0 were the very beginning and entering into relationships and diplomacy and balance and harmony, 29 degrees is like, okay, we've done enough of that. Maybe we're too understanding. Maybe we're too out of balance. Maybe we're too lenient or too much of a pushover or a people pleaser. So I think that this week, as we see this 29 degrees get activated, is representing a transition and basically a completion of some of these lessons. You are going to feel a sense of urgency. Likely you've been feeling this like the last 2 days, as the sun has been in a square to Pluto, and actually last night the moon and Pluto were in conjunction and they were squaring the sun. So there's been something that's been kind of like brewing since Saturday night that's likely to kind of trickle down and have an effect on us into the beginning of the week. Now, for me, when I think about the 29s that are getting activated, so 29 degrees of Aries, and that solar eclipse, 29 degrees of the Venus star point. But I also think about 29 degrees of Capricorn. Pluto's been hovering around that degree. It's now direct. It's heading there at the end of this year. And I think that this is important to kind of really break down and show you guys visually. I'm going to show you guys like a formula that I created in just a second. But 29 degrees of Aries, that solar eclipse that we had, now we're 6 months down the road and we're seeing now how some of those intentions we were setting for ourselves in the area of Aries in our chart is now kind of getting maybe a bit of blowback, pushback. Maybe we're seeing changes in relationships. We're seeing changes with laws. Maybe we're seeing changes also in regards to like karma, because the South Node is there as well. And 29 degrees of Aries, in my mind, represents completing lessons in self, right? To ourselves, within ourselves. That excess of Aries, Mars energy before we kind of move into Taurus, where it's a little bit more cool, calm, comfortable, and collected. So it can represent a personal crisis, especially with that exalted sun in Aries. That solar eclipse was still in a square to Pluto. So it's where we were breaking free of like old power struggles, old storylines, and things that have been kind of hovering over us for some time. And then 2, we see the 29 degrees of Libra that got activated. And for me, this is completing karmic relationship themes, a tipping point. Unfortunately, the 29 degrees of Libra does have some kind of connection sometimes to breakups, separations, divorces, legal situations. And I think with like the Sun-Venus conjunction that we had last year, it's more about, ego in relationships, maybe changes in regards to our personal values and how that has affected our relationship, because the sun can be about our personal kind of, our ego, right? The things that kind of drive us. But with the sun conjunct Venus and the sun in a position where technically it's not as comfortable, right? We start to kind of lose sight of like, well, who am I outside of this relationship? Am I kind of falling into old patterns of maybe kind of losing my identity in partnership to other things, other alliances, other relationships? And then we've got that 29 degrees of Capricorn, which is going to get reactivated here pretty soon. And this is completing karma revolving around power, control, longstanding abuses of power, corruption of systems. Okay. I think it's really fair to say at this point in time, having witnessed like Saturn go in and out of the late degrees of Capricorn, now watching Pluto go in and out of the late degrees of Capricorn, this is like the death rattle, right? This is like the final throes the next year or so, at least until like the fall of 2024, of like power really being held on to by those on top, not wanting to let go. Is it possible that 29 degrees of Capricorn, where, you know, next year where we'll see Pluto go back into Aquarius, most of 2024, we're going to see Pluto in Aquarius, but it will drop back down into Capricorn and stay at 29 degrees. Is it possible that those at the top, right, any institution, I think it's fair to say that most all of them are corrupt. I don't think that there's a single system right now, at least in terms of government structures, you know, big business, big tech, that is not corrupt. I hate to say that, but correct me if I'm wrong. Give me a branch or something that is actually falling in alignment with natural law, or what is legal, I guess I should say. Is it possible they know? You know, is that 29 degrees indicating that leaders and those who are in control are aware that there is some huge shift in consciousness coming, right? It's very, very possible. I've been really fixated on these 29 degrees. It's interesting to see all of them harmonize. You guys are also going to see in the near future, we're going to see this in 2025, Saturn and Neptune will move into Aries at the same time. And we will see a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, and then we will see them both retrograde back together, and they will conjunct in the late degrees of Pisces. So that late degree of Pisces, 29 degrees, the cosmic kind of undoing, everything coming out in the wash machine, everything's kind of melting away, reality as we know it is dissolving. And that will be everything, I think, kind of unfolding. And then as a collective, as Neptune and Saturn move back into Aries fully, that'll be this awareness that's like, okay, it all fell apart. Now, what are we going to do? How do we rebuild? How do we start over? So when you see these 29 degrees, you're going to feel like you're melting. I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. You're going to feel like you're melting this week. Perhaps you started feeling it last night, but you're going to feel it a little bit today as well, as we start seeing, you know, the sun hit 29 degrees over the next 24 hours. So all of these points, right, these 29, 29, 29, it's going to be creating like a T-square. We're going to see a 90-degree angle that is basically being set up. And Pluto is the focal point of this particular T-square. Now, unless we're, you know, talking about what happened over the summertime when we saw planets hit the late degrees of Cancer, we did start to see some of those degrees as well. But because there's nothing in Cancer, really, we're stuck with a T-square. And I don't know about you, but I would much rather have a grand cross or a grand fixed cross, or any cross for that matter, than having a T-square, because there's so much energy focused on the point of the T. You guys get what I'm showing you here? So it's all putting the pressure onto Pluto. So I kept thinking about this. I was going to pull out like my dry erase board and like draw all over it like a crazy Charlie from Always Sunny. But then I was just like, let me make an image and make this easier. So let me guys show you this formula that I created. And for many of you guys, you're going to look at this and you're going to be like, yeah, that's just, you know, how it looks when I look at it in my ephemeris, or I look at it in my transits. So here we go. So I have this for you. This is how I break it down so you guys better understand. We have Pluto, okay? I'm going to get my marker. Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto in Capricorn, which essentially in so many ways, like I said, talks about the power and the control from top-down structures. This is like the boss of the boss of the boss. This is the big business. This is the government. This is everybody who's at the top that's kind of controlling and dictating everything down to the bottom. Square, which represents essentially the pressure point, the north node, right, in Aries, the south node in Libra. Okay, so if you were an astrologer, we write this all out in glyphs. This is how we basically create it in like shorthand, so it's not so long. But for me, when I look at this, I'm like, what does it all mean? Because I've had so many emails, so many text messages, I've seen so many comments, people being like, can you explain to me what the hell is going on? Well, here's my simple explanation. This is where abuse, crisis, or control, Pluto and Capricorn, is creating conflicts, violence, pressure, discord. This is the square between ourselves, Aries, and the relationship to others, Libra, equals creating a breakdown of alliances, South Node in Libra, and individuals who are angry, reactionary, willing to create war, North Node in Aries. This also brings injuries, isolation, and violence, Chiron in Aries. Okay, so we've got the North Node and Chiron conjunction that's heading towards a conjunction in the spring in 2024. So if you're like, what's going on? Why is this happening? This is why this is happening, all right? And although this square is fading, we're starting to see it separate. This particular week, we're in the final moments of these planets kind of going through Libra, creating essentially this hyper kind of intense closing square to Pluto. And by the way, Libra is in superior position. So when Mars squared Pluto, when Mercury squared Pluto, when the Sun squared Pluto, we saw the pros in a sense of people realizing like, hey, like we got to work together. I've heard so much more together talk, so much more peace talk, so much more focus on building and uniting in like the media and in the world like the last like couple weeks than I have in the last 5 or 6 years, which I think is very fascinating. Anyway, but the downside has also been that we have seen the ugly in some relationships, right? We've seen the breakdown of relationships. We've seen a lot of people who have been having conflict and strife and discord because they can't come to some kind of resolution. Anyway, so divide and conquer much, right? I mean, obviously Pluto was like this mastermind because he's kind of putting out his tentacles both to the north and south node, being like, I can disrupt both things. I can create strife in relationships and people arguing over stuff and arguing over who's in control and who should have power and arguing over war and corruption. And then I can, you know, affect my tentacles and send it in the direction of the north node, where I can make people angry and create conflict, and I can push people into war. I can talk about drafts, something that's been coming up a lot this last week. You've been hearing, you know, in some of the news, chatter about whether or not there will be a draft, if there is a setup for a draft here in the United States, which I think is very North Node and Chiron in Aries. It's like, well, there's a war, so we're going to send people off to fight. Young people, right? Aries. So endless distractions of hate, terror, wars. We all get wound up, we get worried, we get angry, and we look for a new world crisis to blame, to distract us from unity and from peace and from truth. So this got me thinking a little bit about universal laws of the universe. So some of you guys may not be familiar with this. Some of you guys might be like, yeah, that's great in theory. But essentially the universal laws can encompass various concepts and principles believed to govern the universe and human existence and the natural order of things. And some would say, if you're a conspiracy theorist, that if you are aware of the natural laws in the universe, then you're aware that the other side, the dark side, the Illuminati, whoever it is that you believe in, also know about this natural law. And this is something that those who are enlightened, those who are aware, who are spiritual, who are checked in, are aware that these truths are standing. They cannot be like infringed upon, right? Unlike other things that are being infringed upon right now. So natural laws in the universe essentially suggest that there is a notion of interconnectedness, which suggests that everything in the universe is interconnected and interdependent. This concept is often expressed as the idea that we cannot truly separate ourselves from the rest of the world or from another. Okay, that didn't make sense to you. Remember Pocahontas? You know, remember all the things, all the colors of the wind, everything is connected. Everything has a life, everything has a feeling, has a vibration. It doesn't matter if it's the raccoon eating biscuits or it's the rocks or it's the plants or whatever. Everything is connected and interacting and being affected by each other. Okay, that's basically what this is saying. So several universal laws and philosophies emphasize this interconnectedness. Number one, law of interconnectedness. The law states that everything in the universe is connected in some way and that our actions and choices have a ripple effect that can impact others in the world as a whole. It suggests that we cannot isolate ourselves from the consequences of our actions. 2, law of oneness. The law teaches that everything and everyone in this universe is ultimately part of a unified whole. It emphasizes that the interconnected nature of all existence, promoting a sense of unity and shared consciousness, meaning you cannot divide things. You cannot divide people. You cannot divide places. You can build walls. You can build bridges. You can build structures. But everything outside of the third dimension is connected, is technically one. So this concept and this idea right now of division and separation and war, it's going against natural law. Right? We're not actually separate. Separation is an illusion. All right, 3, karma. In various spiritual and philosophical traditions, the concept of karma suggests that our actions have consequences and that these consequences are linked to the web of interconnectedness. Positive actions lead to positive outcomes, while negative actions lead to negative outcomes. This concept underscores the idea that we cannot separate our actions from their effects on the world. 4. My 3, 4, 4. Law of cause and effect. This principle asserts that every action has an equal or opposite reaction. It underscores the idea that our choices and actions are interconnected with the outcomes we experience. 5. The butterfly effect. The butterfly effect is a concept from chaos theory that suggests small changes have significant and far-reaching consequences. It illustrates the interconnected nature of complex systems where seemingly insignificant actions can influence larger events. So why do I bring this up? To remind you that right now, and you're going to be feeling this still until Venus comes out of the square with Pluto, that there is a lot of things going on that is going to be creating separation and division. Anger, hostility, vengefulness, all those fun like Mars, Aries, Scorpio type of feelings. But in the end, we are all interconnected. So this concept and this idea of being able to stir the pot right now globally and going from one crisis to the next, where we're all living on the seat of our, the edge of our seat, is meant to be distracting. And you don't want to get distracted by this right now because in a way, it's just kind of entertaining us while other plans are being made. All right, so big news, obviously, Mercury enters Scorpio. You're seeing that this morning as you wake up on Sunday. We'll be joining along with Mars and then eventually the Sun. So we're going to see Sun, Mars, and Mercury in the sign of Scorpio, which in my mind, maybe I'm a bit biased because I have this placement. I think it's soulful communication. It's got depth. It's got a sense of wanting to know more, wanting to ask questions, wanting to kind of get down deep into the grit of it. As I was writing the notes for today's video, I kept thinking about that movie, A Few Good Men. Have you guys seen that? I'm sure you have. Most of you have. But if you haven't, go and watch it. Great movie with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise. I think of that scene where, what is his name? Kathy? And he's going back and forth with Nicholson, who's on the stage, and they're having some like military court hearing at the end. And he says, I want the truth. And he says, well, you can't handle the truth. Very Mercury, Mars, Scorpio moment. This week, you're going to see with Mercury and Mars being in the same sign and the sun showing up, shining a light on this, that really it's about walking the walk and talking the talk, okay? Watching where Mars goes is so important because it is very much connected to the North Node. The North Node is where we are growing, where we're learning. We've got a number of planets moving into a Mars-ruled sign. We've got the North Node that's in a Mars-ruled sign. And guess what? Scorpio and Aries, they in conjunct one another. They get agitated by each other. Even though they have a lot in common, they just don't always realize it. Aries might be really quick moving and heated, while Scorpio is more calculated and more secretive and more kind of like always plotting. So these two can work together if they're able to recognize and kind of set aside their differences and find ways to be able to support one another. But for me, when planets move eighth house to the North Node, it's saying like, we got to expose this thing. We got to be like the Ninja Turtles and get down in the gutters this week. There's going to be a need to really go through the muck, go through the gunk. And with Mars, which is leading the way, talking about action and motivation and determination and anger, and some heavy emotions can come up in Scorpio. Mercury and the Sun will follow, right? So it's basically going to be saying, okay, we have to be courageous. We have to be willing to do this work. So before you guys would fish anything out of the, garbage disposal, or, maybe clean the bottom of a trash can or whatever, you would essentially roll up your sleeves, maybe put on some gloves, right? Prepare yourself to get in there and pull out the muck. That's what I want you guys to be doing on Sunday, because you're getting ready to do that all week long. But Mercury and Mars being there is about getting to the heart of the issue. It's about working through crisis, especially in pressure situations, working through fear, working through trauma. The opportunity that we're going to see that's going to come from this is a handful of trines to Saturn, which is going to help us stay cool, calm, collected, and focused, but also the willingness to kind of look past what is being said is like, just the status quo. I think Saturn in Pisces retrograde is where we're recognizing that some systems are failing. Some, government or bodies or leaders are absent. They're like, I say, out to lunch. I always say that when you look at Biden, it's like lights are on, nobody's home. It's not funny, but we saw that this last week in the media, just like completely bewildered on camera. And watching some of the videos that came out is really concerning, because I think this is when people are starting to kind of realize, like, wait a second, if there's nobody there, what's going on behind the scenes? Who's actually kind of like running things? Maybe it was just me, but that was my perspective on some stuff. But I guess the fruit that we have is the opportunity from Jupiter. So we're going to see a number of oppositions taking place with Jupiter this week. It's a big part of the eclipse, and oppositions to a benefic planet provide opportunities for big soul growth, but I think also a major revelation, right? A major revelation. What is the dispositor of Jupiter? Venus. Venus is basically moving through an area where she's dealing with sickness and challenges and delays, and she's dissatisfied and systems aren't working. It's so fascinating to watch media all over the world. I was really moved to watch most recently this week. It was somebody in Parliament that was basically almost speaking to an empty room, but was finally discussing, there's maybe a handful of people there, these excess death numbers, right? I can't say too much about it without getting flagged, but you get what I'm saying. But there's a lot of video that is out about this right now, and kind of discussing the fact of the matter of some of these numbers that are coming out, and questioning, why is this happening? What's the root of it? Is it from not having adequate health care? Is it from other things that have taken place over the last couple of years? Why are we seeing such elevated numbers post-pandemic, right? So you're going to hear a lot about these topics with Scorpio. Scorpio is some heavy stuff, especially with Mercury and Mars moving through that. Mercury is the messenger. So this is media, this is news, this is articles that are being written, things that are going to be discussed and talked about on social media. But Mercury and Mars is the business of war, death, famine, talking about destruction, a loss of some kind, but also crime, corruption, things that happen in the shadows. Jupiter is about truth, right? It's about the moral high ground. It can be about honesty. It can be about laws. So Jupiter is currently in Taurus, and that has some kind of focus on laws or governing, or maybe lessons or global patterns revolving around banking, markets, investors, and the money made by some of these groups. So it'll be interesting to watch this buildup of Mercury and Mars start coming into an opposition with Jupiter. Raise your hand if you have 8th house Mercury or Mars placements, or if you have Mercury or Mars in Scorpio. Great for analysis and going deep and doing research. When I make these videos, it's from me basically all week making notes and setting stuff aside and getting ready to give you guys this presentation to talk about how this correlates with what's going on out in the world. boy, am I excited to see this transit, because I think this is going to be quite an amazing lead up until we start to see a Mercury retrograde eventually taking place in Capricorn into Sag, where we're going to start to see certain narratives kind of turn, or truth being brought out, because all of this is going to square Saturn and also Neptune. So there is going to be probably teachers and professors and lawyers and other people who are going to come out and start kind of doing their Sagittarius soapbox work. But before that happens, all of the investigators, all of the spies, all of the people who are turning over confidential information, the people who are working as informants, are going to be doing the work right now while these planets go into Scorpio. So with all of this being in conjunct or quincunx the North Node, best believe part of what this Scorpio season is going to be about is about some really significant things that take place that are eventually going to make everybody collectively, March, April 2024, start realizing like, oh, you know, shit hit the fan in the fall of 2023, or there were things going on behind the scenes that are just now being brought to light, which is going to make a lot of people angry. A lot of people are going to want to fight back. A lot of people who are going to be focusing on how some of the events affect them personally, right? North Node in Aries, Chiron in Aries, their health, their children, also the state of our military and our defense. If there has been intentional or potentially like weaponized things used against these groups of people, inhibiting them from being able to protect not just us, but themselves. You guys got to think, you know, we're going into Uranus in Gemini pretty soon, Pluto in Aquarius. We're going to see Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Like, the astrology the next couple of years is very different than what we have been experiencing. And so it's not too far off to imagine that there is a future where a lot of the service industry will potentially be robots, that we will see a lot of jobs replaced by AI, that we will not necessarily be fighting wars with physical bodies. Perhaps it's going to be robots. So we're going to see an understanding or an awareness as to why certain groups have been broken down these years because of the ushering of this new technology that's going to be kind of rolling out. So we want to be watching Aries related things, younger people, military, men, okay, in general, male fertility, testosterone, things revolving around head injuries, things revolving around blood and arteries. This is all like Aries related things. And, you know, as I was making this, I was like, wow, you know, if Taurus is what we physically possess and Scorpio is, you know, the money that we have access with other people, it can also have connection to the money that's flowing in the markets. I was like, what kind of information is going to be coming out when we start to have these oppositions to Jupiter? Got me kind of digging a little bit. So if you guys want a good laugh or a good cry, go and look at the stocks that Congress has been investing in. This is per Finbold News this month, and also confirmed by Unusual Whales on Twitter. Quote, Congress buys up war stocks ahead of Hamas attacks, unquote. Which is interesting because this was actually published on the 8th of October. And then I went and looked at the article and I read through it, and just the bullet points would be mini bought defense company, GD, General Dynamics. Numerous Republicans bought heavy into oil energy companies with buys in XOM, DVN, CVX. Many Democrats bought into cybersecurity like FTNT. And these companies lobby Congress heavily, okay? And remember that the market is a reflection of geopolitical events, so those who have the right foresight can harness it in the direction of making investments and kind of coming up. So, you know, as they say, buying the rumor and selling the news, congressional moves, while subject to scrutiny, can offer a finger on the pulse of where smart money might be heading. In the world of stocks, information is powerful. The key is knowing how to interpret it. What do you guys think about that? Do you guys think that there's any connection to Congress investing in some of that stuff prior to this stuff happening? And then escalation now of things not just in Israel, but also like potentially in other areas like Syria or Iran? not really being reported on in Western media, but it's happening if you guys go looking for it. And then eventually, later this week, we're going to see the second eclipse, okay? So we've got number 2 coming. This will be a larger-than-life lunar eclipse in Taurus, conjunct Jupiter, oppose Mercury and Mars, and completing a cycle that's been active since fall of 2021. So finally, fully passing the torch to Aries and Libra. Taurus and Scorpio can kind of take a breather here for a little bit because that's finally going to wrap up. If you happen to have any placements around, let's say 0 to like maybe 7 or 8 degrees of Taurus or the fixed signs, okay, so Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, you're going to be feeling this eclipse. Honestly, I'm trying to be optimistic about it, okay? It's conjunct Jupiter. And Jupiter will be retrograde, but it's going to hover around this 5 degrees for about a month from mid-December until early January. So we'll see the effects of this eclipse kind of unfold really for several weeks into the new year. So it can be like this big eclipse that, you know, provides some sweetness or some opportunity or some kind of abundance. Not wild about Venus, you know, being in Virgo, not wild about the fact that we're seeing an exact Mercury-Mars opposition. The next 2 lunations are going to feel like we got to do this right now. You're going to feel the pulse of things really start to kind of pick up because this eclipse is in opposition to Mercury and Mars. The next new moon that we're going to have in Scorpio is going to be exactly in conjunction to I think Mercury and Mars. Yeah, or I think Mars, not Mercury. It'll be Sun, Moon, Mars in Scorpio, and then we're going to have a Mars Cazimi. And Mercury and Mars are going to be moving side by side for some time. We're going to see this for like really the next month. And then we'll start to see them kind of break away. Mercury will go into Sag, but there will be a Mercury retrograde that's going to happen starting in Sagittarius, starting in Capricorn. And it'll, at the end of the year, start coming in back into Sag, and it'll conjunct with Mars. I'm working on a really interesting video. I want to talk to you guys really about that and why the Mercury-Mars cycle is so significant, that it's going to be a period of just a lot of heated conversations. But also as it gets into Sagittarius, we're going to kind of lose the plot a little bit and start really, we're going to need to ask ourselves, like, whose fight are we fighting, right? But for right now, watch for that eclipse. That's going to be big energy. You're going to see the oppositions to Jupiter where there is an opportunity through an opposition to learn more, okay? And so those of you guys who are willing to ask the hard questions this week, if you can handle the truth, ask for it, look for it, go and find the truth, ask the hard questions, get to the bottom of things, be willing to get out of your own way, because all of this energy is 8th house to the North Node, which means you got to go through the gunk. You have to be willing to roll up your sleeves and kind of go through all the nasty stuff. And I think the sun is going to help shine a light on that and give us the opportunity to kind of see what's going on in the shadows. Okay? All right. Let's take a look at the week ahead. Let's start with this morning. Good morning to my Sunday crew. I hope you guys are doing well. I just want to say, I'll give you guys like a heads up for each day, okay, as I go through the week. But if you're just making notes right now, today's the day you want to pay attention. All right, the 2 better days of the week that I like are going to be Tuesday and Wednesday, the 24th and the 25th. There's some really great transits happening that day. Thursday is a day that you're going to be asking yourself, what do I need to change? What do I need to change? What is not working? And then don't forget, Saturday is the eclipse, but that Saturday, that eclipse on Saturday, it's going to roll into Sunday. So just assume Saturday and Sunday is an eclipse because you're going to see some on the back end. Okay? Just the week at a glance. All right, so looking today at the 22nd, as we wake up in the morning, the moon has ingressed into Aquarius. So if you felt this late last night, the moon was in conjunction to Pluto and it was coming into a square with the sun. So this does feel like a bit of a crisis point happening on Saturday night. We might see some really intense world events that's kind of bringing us to that point where we're like, what's going to happen? We see that square taking place, and then when we're waking up this morning, the moon's in Aquarius, so it's a really different energy. Now, Mercury has also just entered into Scorpio. As soon as Mercury goes into Scorpio, we are feeling that shift on a mental like level. We're feeling the need to go deeper. We're asking questions. Some of us are going to go back and forth between being paranoid. Okay, Mercury and Mars in Scorpio can be paranoia. Some of us are going to be like, no, there's something to this. Like, I need to ask some questions. I like that, similar to when, you know, Mars entered Scorpio, we immediately see trines to Saturn. So the Sun, Mercury, Mars, all those trines to Saturn are prompting us to say, what else is going on behind the scenes? What am I not seeing? What am I not aware of? Where do I need to dig a little bit deeper to get a better understanding? Now, trines are positive energy. Saturn is giving us some kind of stability, but Saturn is still retrograde. It's at 0 degrees, which is a very karmic degree. So it is kind of still working through, kind of getting its sea legs, right? Pun intended, of trying to find some stability in a sign that there is nothing solid. So this is where perhaps we're going to hear some chatter revolving around like, well, what's really going on? And like, what's really happening? And why is the world falling apart, right? Really, Saturn and Pisces. And it's for me exciting, even though it's trying times. It's exciting to see people who have never really questioned things or never really, gone beyond just the mainstream, narrative, start to kind of look around and go like, why does this feel like this is all like amplifying? Or why does it seem like things are ramping up? I think Saturn in Pisces is an emperor has no clothes moment. Whether it's an emperor has no clothes, president doesn't have a brain, what else? The banks don't have your money. I mean, like, these are some of the things that people, unfortunately, it's not funny, but people don't realize, or they're not checked in, and they're not, they're not asking questions. But there are people who are starting to become aware, and they're going like, something's not right here. So the trines to Saturn maybe indicate it's time to sit on it, to meditate on it, to think about it, to reflect on it, to kind of question, well, why would that be happening? Why did that dissolve? Why did that go away? Why did that disappear? So Mercury trine Saturn is a very sobering mind in a period where, this is happening in water signs. So it requires a sense of, commitment, mental commitment, the ability to communicate more maturely. I think this is a wonderful aspect for committing to like a contract or signing something or like a time frame. Unfortunately, it goes hand in hand with the Sun square Pluto. So I don't really see this being a situation where it's the best day for relating. But it does give us the opportunity to say, okay, I'm setting the intention that I'm going to complete this thing within X amount of time. And I'm feeling my way into it. Yeah, does that feel right? Yeah, okay, that feels right. That type of thing. Anyway, then we're going to see the very same day, like I said, the reactivation of this 29. So we will see the sun hit 29, and the moon will continue to move through Aquarius, and it's going to come into squares with Jupiter in the PM hours. So to be honest with you, even though we're already over the sun square Pluto and like the moon triggered that last night, as we go through today, the moon is still in a square with Mercury and Mars. So that's finding it difficult to relate. Maybe we were feeling a little touchy, a little sensitive, a little rushed. I do feel like once the moon comes out of that square, it gets a little bit easier in the PM hours. At least we have the moon in Aquarius and the sun in Libra. So that's very social. But the moon is going to start coming into a square with Jupiter. So we're emotionally feeling things quite intensely. I think like feelings feel bigger. Collectively, we're responding to things in a much bigger way. And we're going to be feeling that T-square kind of between the moon, Jupiter, and Mars. So I could definitely see some people being a little argumentative with that placement, and kind of feeling like they're going back and forth with some debates about what's happening in the world or with financial systems. So curious to see what's going on in the world Saturday going into Sunday morning, and how that's going to affect the news cycle or the financial cycles for the rest of the week. All right, so that's pretty much Sunday. You'll see that 29 degrees. That's going to carry on into Monday morning, the 23rd. And when we're waking up, the moon is still in Aquarius. The sun is in the last moments of Libra. And we're going to start to see the moon come into a square with Uranus in the afternoon hours. So this for me is that emotional uneasiness. You know, when the moon's in Aquarius, we want to do things different. We want to be focusing on the future. We want to be coming together with groups. And the moon is moving through a sign that sometimes need to act a little rebelliously, right? And it's challenging or squaring Uranus and Taurus, which is interesting because we got to be looking at Uranus because that's the dispositor of this moon. So there's something a little disjointed. Like I think I have said to you guys for some time, I'm curious to see coming into this eclipse what's happening with the financial cycles. But knowing that Aquarius moon is squaring Uranus, I think we're going to start to see the pressure revolving around that. Sun's in Scorpio, so this is the beginning of the Scorpio season. And we're going to begin to start seeing the sun come into a trine with Saturn. Although I don't think that's going to pick up until the PM here. Let's see. Yeah, kind of overnight. So the sun trine Saturn exactly looks like it's going to be happening very early in the morning on the 24th. But honestly, the 23rd and the 24th, you can really benefit from the sun trine Saturn. For me, the trines between Pisces and Scorpio are very psychic, okay? There's a reason why people say, oh, the veil is thinning, like in October, because planets go through Scorpio and we are closer to the other side. There is more activity. We are more tapped in. Is it seasonal changes? Is it, you know, the fact that everybody's in that kind of mood where we're seeing these collective holidays outside of Halloween, where we're wanting to kind of connect with our deceased relatives on the other side? Maybe. But I think that this one is especially significant, at least for me, because as I watch the transit of the moon here on the 24th, so this is going to be Tuesday. So this is one of the days that I actually really like this week. The moon is going to early morning on Tuesday come into Pisces, and it's going to cross Saturn. And as it does this, it starts trining the sun, okay? So something I like about this is that it's giving us the opportunity to find a way forward and to commit to something emotionally, but also through actions. Remember I said walking the walk and talking the talk? That's Mercury and Mars in conjunction. But when the sun shows up, and the sun is the dispositor of Mercury and when Mars is the dispositor of Mercury and the sun, we have to be like, I'm saying this, I'm doing this, this is what I'm doing. And what does Scorpio want? Two things, chaos or change. Pick one. You're going to get both. Either way, just one's easier than the other. So remember, Scorpio thrives in environments that are challenging, scary, destructive, dangerous, right? We don't want these things, but if anybody who knows somebody who has really strong Mercury, Mars, Pluto conjunctions or Scorpio placements or 8th house placements, these are people who can be trauma healers, shamans. These are people who can also be criminals and locksmiths, and people who can crack codes, or people who can perform surgeries, or, you know, work in emergency rooms, like people who know how to work under pressure, right? So as all these planets come together, what we're really looking at is like, okay, what's not sitting right? Where is there some kind of crisis that we need to actually work through? And how do we handle that crisis? Well, the moon in Saturn on Tuesday says we collectively need to take time to reflect and be in silence. Also, this is about letting things go, letting it go. You know, the moon Saturn is a really serious, somber kind of feeling. It is down. And what Saturn transits kind of teach us is that it can't be all peaks. You got to have some valleys in there somewhere. Well, with Mercury, Mars, and the sun trine Saturn and the moon on Tuesday morning, it's a period of reflection. For some, it'll be mourning. For some, it'll be grief. For some, it'll feel like loss of your old life, old ways of doing things, clearing things out, clearing out desks and jobs and houses. But also, it's the promise of something new. So if you find the time, I really recommend, especially Tuesday morning, get up early, set your alarms 30 minutes early, take time before you start your day to sit and meditate and reflect on how are you feeling, what are you picking up on collectively, and how can we help initiate change, right? Because when the moon comes into conjunction with Saturn, we can all do that together. Then we're going to see the moon and Saturn trine the sun. So this is where we are taking action, you know, unveiling, clearing, purging, removing, exorcising stuff out, and the need to create that emotional safe space, right? Saturn can be about boundaries and borders, but it's about creating that space. So maybe you have to sit in the bathtub in the morning or take a longer shower. Maybe you have to start the morning with, you know, hot water and, you know, a good cry. I mean, that could happen with some of these placements that we have in the water signs. But this is the beginning process, I think, of coming to some sense of awareness that's like, okay, something's getting ready to change. And just note that when that comes up. Then this is going to take us into Wednesday. Moon's going to keep moving. You'll see in the late hours on Tuesday, the moon will start sextiling Jupiter. Okay, so then we are going to see early morning on the 25th, my second day that I like. Early in the morning, we're going to see the moon come into opposition with Venus, which is going to have us feeling like something's out of reach. It's like, I wish I could have more of that. I'm craving that thing. No, that's not good for me. Venus in Virgo. Okay. I could also see this being a situation where the time that we are taking away from something or stepping back, maybe we become aware that's like, hey, now I'm realizing like that pattern, that habit, that relationship, that thing, it wasn't so good for me, right? Then we're going to start to see the moon coming into a sextile with Uranus later in the morning. And eventually it'll wrap up with a conjunction to Neptune. So the moon will sextile in the morning. And then we're going to wrap the day up with the moon conjunct Neptune in the PM hours, and then it'll start sextiling Pluto. So the 25th on Wednesday, still, you know, maybe finishing the day with a meditation. You could start or finish, really either or. But I think about how first the moon hits Saturn and there's an emotional coldness and a restriction. And then it trines all the Scorpio and it's like, it's okay, we can clear it out, we can let it go, even if that's scary or it makes you mad or you're upset about something. And then it conjuncts Neptune and then it washes something away. So we're really flushing something out or working through something on the 24th and on the 25th. P.S. We're days away from the eclipse. So that's the other side of this, is that as we're leading up to the eclipse, we're feeling that buildup, right, of the energies getting bigger. All right, so then we see in the PM hours on Wednesday, the moon is going to shift into Aries. We wake up on Thursday, and this is the day that you're going to be like, okay, where do I need to make the change? This, like, everybody's going to feel this, trust me. Because right off the bat, the moon is in Aries in the morning, which means we're looking at Mars. And Mars is now getting closer and closer to Mercury. So it can be feeling like this impulsiveness or obsession or fixation or the need to cut something, clear something, or, you know, transform something, kill something off, remove it, purify it. And the moon and the sun come into and in conjunct with one another. So it's going to be like, oh, something's got to change here, right? And like I said, Aries wants to take action. It wants to do it on its own. And Scorpio is feminine, right? It's yin. It kind of retreats. It's like, nope, don't want to give it up. Don't want to give it up. But the lesson, I think, of Scorpio is kind of like the aftermath, the change, the transformation after the relationship seasons that we just had, all of the ups and downs and the changes with other people. It's how do we come back from that? How do we, how do we respond to that? You know, grief is funny. It's a weird thing. It can, come back weeks later, years later. It can be something that suddenly just erupts. We're going to notice a lot of eruptions of conversations and feelings and volatility with Mercury, Mars in conjunction. It can be, very hasty when the moon is in Aries. We can have this tendency to be like, I hate this, I hate that, I want to change it. And the key here is to recognize that something is needing to get out, that we need to make some kind of correction. As the moon goes through Aries, it's going to in conjunct the sun, so we're going to feel a little discombobulated on Thursday. Then it'll come into in conjunction with Mercury. Then it'll come into in conjunction with Mars. Don't sleep on the 26th, guys. This is almost like, I think, the day where if you don't know what you're hoping to give up during the eclipse, this is probably going to give you your clue. And then we're going to feel this really intense Mars energy. I mean, to have 3 planets here and to have the moon, North Node, and Chiron here, perhaps maybe, it's showing us where some type of poison is coming up for us that is literally, inhibiting our own growth, our own healing. I think of Scorpio being things that are toxic, poisonous, right? Deadly. But Mercury and Mars can be this talk of war, this talk of death. I mean, it's so hard being on Twitter right now, because it's like you'll be scrolling and then all of a sudden you'll see all of these images and these pictures and all of this stuff. It's just like, it's devastating, right? But it's also exhausting constantly hearing the ping pong back and forth of, well, this person's right and this person's wrong and this country's right and that country's wrong. Like it's gotten to the point where it's just become normalized and people are almost like desensitized from just talking about that this is the way that the world is. And so it's going to take us on an individual level to get sick of our own shit and be willing to go, I'm not going to talk about this anymore, or I'm not going to stand for this anymore, or I'm not going to participate in this anymore. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be stuff on social media, but you have to look at where Scorpio is in your life, because there's something there that you really want to be aware of, that you want to be paying attention to, because it's irritating and inhibiting the North Node from doing its thing. So as the moon goes through Aries, it's going to be just agitating everybody to all hell. And it's going to be a lot of people being like, this thing's got to go, this thing in my life, or this talk or whatever. So the moon's going to keep going through Aries. And that's pretty much it. It looks like it's going to come into contact with Chiron in the evening. Okay, so that's really interesting, because after a day of probably feeling like we've been fighting it out, then it comes into conjunction with Chiron. And it's like, I personally, I think I've said to you guys before, I have an Aries moon and I have like the North Node and Chiron coming up on my moon. And I've noticed that this lunar transit always goes hand in hand with like a migraine for me. And so I started like noting like, okay, when is it happening? What's going on at that time? And I've recognized that a lot of it has to do with just emotional stuff that either I'm not dealing with, or things that I'm not taking care of, or stuff that I'm not talking about. So I've made a mental note to be mindful of when the moon goes through this sign, especially because, I have Mercury, Mars, and the sun in Scorpio, by the way. And I've also found that probably the biggest thing that triggers it for me is sugar. Because what? It creates inflammation, right? Mercury, Mars. So the inflammation, could be coming up for you in other ways. It doesn't have to be food. It can be an argument. It could be irritation. It could be, you're rushed, or, there's an accident and then boom, oh, I hate this. Now I'm feeling the effects of it. Our bodies tell us, especially with North Node and Chiron and Aries, our bodies tell us where we are needing to stop and slow down. Sickness, illness, all these things come up, especially in Aries, to make us more aware of the fact that we need to be working on ourselves, doing our healing work. So pay attention maybe what comes up for the 27th for you. Does something happen that is in the Scorpio area of your life that triggers some kind of thing where you're like, okay, well, now I got to heal this. Now I have something to take care of. This is going to take us to Friday. So here we go. So then we get into Friday the 27th. So we're already here. Early in the morning, the conjunction happens around midday. Right here, after the Chiron conjunction. So then the North Node conjunction will happen in the evening on the 27th. And the moon will come into a square with Pluto. So not only is the moon going to pass Chiron and realize it's got to heal something, but then it's going to touch on the North Node and it's going to go, okay, I got to do this work. Well, the moon and the North Node are ruled by Mars, and Mars is in Scorpio. And Mercury and Mars are building into conjunction. So there's going to be this pace of quick conversation and talk about change and this and that that's coming up. And then late in the evening, the moon will square Pluto. So that's going to be in the overnight hours on the 28th. And the 28th is the eclipse day. But in my mind, from the moment that the moon starts coming into a square with Pluto, okay, so it'll be, you know, late Friday evening going into early Saturday, you are already feeling this. So that moon's going to act as a trigger. Why? Well, Pluto is the modern day ruler of Scorpio. So we don't just have to look at Mercury and Mars coming into conjunction. We can look at the moon triggering Pluto. And then in the morning on the 28th, the moon ingresses into Taurus. So at least it's in its exaltation. In theory, it's more cool, calm, and collected. I don't think there's anything cool, calm, and collected about this personally. Because we're going to see immediately off the bat, the moon is starting to come into an opposition with the sun. So we're hours away from the eclipse. The last nice aspect before the eclipse that the moon does make is a sextile to Saturn. However, Saturn's at 0 degrees, the moon's at 0 degrees. It can't do much because it's learning how to stabilize after kind of dissolving or releasing or letting something go. P.S. That's what lunar eclipses are about. These are big conclusions and completions. Especially this is the last eclipse in the series of eclipses since the fall of 2021 in Taurus and Scorpio. And I mean, I'll take a lunar eclipse in Taurus over one in Scorpio. That's just me. But this one is definitely going to pack a bit of a punch. And as you guys may have seen in my eclipse video, I talk about how this opposition is baked into the eclipse, this really strong moon, Jupiter, Uranus, you know, there could be wealth, there could be life, there could be growth, there could be abundance. There's plenty of land, plenty of food, plenty of resources. But that Mercury, Mars, Scorpio is tapping in saying, no, but we take, we keep, you know, greed, obsession, fixation, manipulation, control. So you're going to see that dynamic between these rather, you know, positive aspects in Taurus and these really intense aspects in Scorpio. So on the eclipse, we're going to see obviously an exalted moon conjunct Jupiter. So that's pretty sweet. We're going to see the eclipse come in at 5 degrees. So if you have any planets like 0 to like 8 degrees of the fixed signs, like I said, you're going to feel it. This will be when the moon opposes the sun, and this is going to create a lunar eclipse. Why? Because the moon is within range of the North Node. I saw a couple of people asking me questions about this. This is going to be a lunar eclipse in Taurus, even though, yes, the North Node is in Aries. In this eclipse, we're really focusing on where Taurus is in your chart. That's where the full moon is going to be. So there's some completion that you have really probably been working on for 2 years here. And I think that this could be like the cherry on top of whatever you've been working on for the last few years in the Taurus area of your life. However, it does come with some challenges. It does come with some need to take action, to speak up, to say something, to do something. These are financial signs. So Taurus does deal with the banking institution, with bonds, with agriculture, with real estate. Scorpio deals with debt. Okay, so part of me wonders, like, is this when we begin to see the pop? Right? Because I've heard, I mean, I'm glad to see people interact on the channel. I'm always happy to see people's comments and stuff, but there's definitely some division in terms of people's perspective of the direction of where things are going. And you guys may not start to see the breakdown until closer to the new year, but I definitely feel like there are some things that are coming up financially that I feel like we just can't stop. So, you know, North Node and Uranus and Jupiter and Taurus in recent years have brought us almost double, you know, the interest rates. It's brought inflation, inflated home prices, excessive, you know, grocery bills, the things that we would generally see with the North Node in Taurus or Jupiter in Taurus. Now that the North Node is gone, this may be the one last big thing that we see before Jupiter and Uranus eventually conjunct, and that will be in the spring of 2024. But for right now, when we see these eclipses, because the North Node and also the moon does kind of talk about what we're all collectively feeling, my eyes are definitely on what's going on with the financial markets. If you guys saw my eclipse video, I talk about how the moon is in exact conjunction, I believe, to America's progressed Venus. It's the Venus of the stock market here in the New York Stock Exchange. Yeah, I'm curious to see what's kind of going down, because I feel like there's going to be something about these two things that are going to significantly pipe up after the eclipse. Anyway, eclipse ruled by Venus. Venus is at 18 degrees in Virgo, so this is a sign that deals with health, healing, systems, right? So health systems. And I think we might be hearing more about the money that's being implemented into this, that's being put into this. My eyes are going to be on healthcare workers and nurses and, health assistants and pharmacy technicians and pharmacists and herbalists. This is really what I'm looking to follow, or the types of people I'm looking to follow, because I think we're going to hear a lot about these groups. Anyway, there's a video on that if you guys want to check that out. I did a video on the lunar eclipse in Taurus, and I dig deep into that. And then finally, we will see the eclipse at 5 degrees, which is exactly in opposition to the sun. But hours later, and this is why I say the eclipse will roll, we see then the moon oppose Mercury, which is like trying to emotionally relate, but having a difficult time doing so. The moon in Taurus wants to be cool, calm, collected, peaceful, serene. It wants to be enjoying its life. And then you've got Mercury and Mars that's trying to disrupt that, trying to create some kind of strife. And it'll be exactly conjunct the moon right when Mercury and Mars conjunct. So we're going to have the moon at 11, Jupiter at 11, Mercury at 11, Mars at 11. What do we know about 11s? Oh, I don't have my book. 11 has associations with Uranus or Aquarius. Chaos, breakdown, sudden escalations, things that sometimes explode, things that are about technology and the future, right? So we're going to be hearing about how these things are coming and affecting the market, right? Taurus, the banks, and the ruler or the dispositor of all of these planets is Venus. And here's Venus in Virgo. And Venus is starting to come into a trine with Uranus, which means we're going to start hearing about the future, I think, of technology and AI and new developments and things that are getting ready to be rolled out that are going to significantly impact employment, that's going to significantly impact our health. Also, our people in uniforms, right? Virgo can be about women in the service. I think we're going to be hearing more chatter about women in the service, or whether or not, young people are going to be drafted, if women would be included in that. But I think it's going to be about healthcare systems. That's really what I'm focusing on. And then after that happens, and we have this, I hate to say it, Scorpio season, this shit show, which is going to happen very early morning on the 29th. So this is why I say the eclipse rolls on. So I'm watching the news Sunday morning, because whatever was going on in the world Saturday night is going to be bringing up lots of chatter in Sunday morning. So we'll talk about it next week. We'll see what is taking place, because right now we're a little bit more than a week out. But we wake up in the morning on the 29th, and the moon is leaving its conjunction to Jupiter, coming now into a conjunction with Uranus. So this will be in the PM hours at 21. So where are things settling come the evening of Sunday the 29th? I don't know. I know that when the moon conjuncts Uranus, it's the shocks and surprises, right? At 21, it represents some kind of growth, development, legal situations, travel situations, because this is the Sagittarius degree, and this will be trining Venus. So this is one of those situations, because it's just after an eclipse, and we have Venus that is at 20 degrees, which is a Scorpio degree, trining this, that I do not feel like this is a positive trine. Yes, moon trine Venus is usually positive, but not when Venus is in its fall. And we're starting to watch Venus come into an opposition with Neptune. So we're going to start to realize, oh, who's going to save us? Who's going to provide resources, medical care? Who's going to ensure that we get what we need when it comes to support or services? You're going to hear out in the world the next week or two, because of this building aspect, about who didn't get support, who didn't get supplies, who wasn't protected, who wasn't taken care of, who wasn't brought in and assisted. That's going to be a big theme. And then the moon will start to kind of separate. And when it does, it'll then sextile Neptune and it'll trine Pluto. So on the way out, even though the eclipse is over, right? On the way out, we start seeing lots of contact with other planets. And this is now going into Monday. But that also seems to signify some kind of ending, some kind of completion, some kind of transformation. And at the very least, the moon trine Pluto can be empowering. But I do wonder if this is going to be more about like the banking systems and whether or not there's some kind of support, or if there's, something that's put in place where there's some kind of statement that's coming out from, world governments about, well, this is what we're doing about the banking and the resources. And, this is how we're going to help everybody. And in the background, Mercury and Mars are going to keep moving, making oppositions to Jupiter. And I assume, because that's all I really can do, I assume that the talk is going to be about, well, is this legal? Is this legal? Like, can this happen? So I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave you guys on that cliffhanger. I hope this was helpful. I will be, if you guys want, sorry, I keep hitting my mic. If you guys want, let me take you through the Mercury through the 12 signs really quick, so you know where Mercury is going to be in your chart, so you can be aware of where you're doing some shifting. Let's bring it to, yeah, I'll take it to there. That's fine. Just really quick so you guys are aware. There we go. Scorpio would be first. Okay. So remember, okay, like I said, Mercury is entering into Scorpio, right? Let me change days, actually. This will probably be better so you guys can see the sun there too. There we go. Remember that Mercury is moving into Scorpio. Mercury represents the mind, communication, intellect, media, travel, business, systems, electronics. And all of these placements, Mercury, Mars, and the sun, is about walking the walk and talking the talk. So your job this week in the area of Scorpio, so look at your chart, is to not just talk about change, be about change, right? Even if it's scary, even if you don't want to deal with it, even if you're afraid it's going to cause a fight, if there's going to be some conflict or challenge or situation that you don't want to deal with, my advice is handle it on Tuesday or Wednesday. Meditate on it first. But be willing to do work in this area of your chart. Okay, so let's start with Aries and Aries rising. You are going to be having Mercury enter into Scorpio. It'll be in your 8th house, so a lot of what I've been preaching relates to you. Mercury rules your 3rd and your 6th, so this can be about communication, gadgets, information, documents, siblings, and your schedule, your health, and your routine. So some of you guys might be dealing with like insurance matters, phone calls, following up on claims. Some of you guys might have a dispute over some resources with a sibling or with a partner. There might be a sense of gathering and getting things ready together for taxes, talking about budgeting, that kind of stuff. But with so many planets in the 8th house, change is inevitable. And it looks like there's a lot of back and forth about money coming in probably through this eclipse, and what you do with those resources with a partner or in regards to debt or paying things off. There's a lot of exchange kind of conversations that are going on for you this week, Aries. So pay attention, especially because Mercury and Mars are going to be aligning with that eclipse for you. So it seems like there is going to be a lot of back and forth with the financial situation. For my Taurus and my Taurus risings, you guys are going to be experiencing Mercury entering into your 7th house. So Mercury rules your 2nd house of personal resources, self-esteem, and possessions. It also rules your 5th house, which deals with creativity, romance, and children. Well, I mean, it's hard to not see what's going on in relation to other people this month, my Tauruses, because you have Mercury and Mars and the Sun in your 7th house. So there's a lot of feeling like people are coming at you. You might feel like there is some intense conversations with other people, but it also might be that there's a lot of partnership or a lot of focus on a relationship, or maybe you're getting out there and you're trying to date. Maybe you're meeting a lot with clients, or you're adding more to your marketplace, or maybe you're just having a lot of meetings. But for me, I feel like this is about talking passionately about other people, about what you value. There can be a sense of you going back and forth, talking about how to make more money, how to get creative with some of your investments. There can be a lot more focus on spending money and having fun in entertaining, partnerships. So if you're single and you're going out more with your partner, that can kind of be happening. I do think that I would just be keeping in the back of my mind that, these planets throughout this whole month really is eventually going to be coming into an opposition with planets in your sign. And so a lot of this makes me feel like it's about observing where other people can kind of get carried away and not letting other people kind of get your goat. Because I think that can definitely be something that can happen. But if you're looking to meet with people, have meetings, connect with relationships, work with other people, I think that this can be actually a really beneficial time. And we've got Gemini and Gemini rising. Obviously, my gems, you're ruled by Mercury, so you're definitely going to feel this. You'll be having Mercury go into Scorpio through your 6th house. Mercury natally rules your 1st house of self and body. It also has connections to your 4th house of home and family. My Geminis, I love this for just like getting down and dirty and cleaning everything up. Like it's probably going to be you doing it. I don't know if you're going to be cleaning your house because Mercury rules your 4th, or you're going to be doing a deep clean in your office. It may mean that you're doing a lot of work cleaning up emotional things. Cleaning up habits, right? Because Mercury and Mars are here in your 6th house. Mercury likes being in the 6th house. Mars does well here. I do feel like whether it's just wanting to kind of get things clean and orderly, or cleaning up your routine, or maybe just getting some stuff checked off your to-do list, this is actually a really wonderful time for you. The only thing you want to take into consideration is this is all trining Saturn. So it's actually really here to kind of help you get organized so you feel like you're in more control when it comes to your work or your responsibilities out in the world. There can be a sense of having to like really work with other coworkers, or if you have employees, or asking people to kind of help you. So this might be a time, if you're somebody who's like in a management position, where you're having to learn that being a boss is about like learning how to delegate tasks, not doing everything yourself. So you might have to guide some people, you might have to do some training of some kind, but in the end of the day, it's going to help make your job a little bit easier. We've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You'll be experiencing Mercury entering into Scorpio in your natal 5th house. This is a fellow sister sign. So having planets go through Scorpio in general is actually pretty positive for you, Cancer, especially because you'll see some of these planets also trine planets in Pisces in your 9th house. So you'll be experiencing some water trines. You're the only sign that's going to be getting this, by the way, an exact water trine. So if you're a Cancer, Sun, Moon, or Rising, it might be a time where you're feeling more emotionally tapped in, sensitive, aware, kind of intuitive. The 5th house is an awesome place to have the sun. It's very comfortable there. I think a lot of this for you with Mercury going into your 5th house and the connection to the 12th and the 3rd is about feeling inspired. It can have you wanting to like write creatively. You might be designing. You might be focusing more on hanging out with children. You might be feeling more romantic and like wanting to date. And I do feel like this might have you just expressing yourself a little bit more and really tapping into, how you want to express yourself to other people, because you're going to see a number of trines to Saturn, and Saturn rules relationships. And so it can be people at a distance. It can be your beliefs about relationships. It can mean that, you're working with a teacher or a mentor of some kind. And they're kind of instructing you on how to kind of really tap into your creative side and maybe perfect something along the way. Okay? Good luck, Cancer. We've got Leo and Leo rising. You're going to be experiencing Mercury going into the sign of Scorpio This will be happening in your natal 4th house, and your 4th house is all about your home, your roots, and your family in the past. Now, for you, Mercury has connections to your 2nd house of money, personal possessions, and resources, as well as your 11th house, which deals with your goals, your networks, and your friends. It's interesting to see the Sun and Mercury in close proximity in your 4th house. You're going to see this, for a period of a couple days. I think that this is really going to be more about like maybe taking stock in what you have at home. There can be a sense of maybe putting money or more action into setting up the home space, rearranging things. Maybe you're making some home purchases, or you're investing in some stuff that you're going to have for a while. I think Mercury's connection to the 11th house might mean that you're entertaining more. So it's possible that maybe you're having somebody come and stay and visit with you, or you're preparing the house for the holidays. Naturally, when Mercury's in the 4th house, we kind of run around and like organize our kitchen, and we're talking to family more, and maybe you're planning some kind of trips back home. But with the Sun and Mars being there, I'm wondering if it's like organizing other people coming to visit you. Now, if not, it could be that some of you guys are anticipating a move or a change in the home base. So, for the most part, I think it's positive. You will eventually start to feel some of these planets in Scorpio come into a square with your planets in Leo and oppose the 10th house. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of action on the home front, and then an eclipse in the 10th house. You're getting pulled in 2 different directions. Focus on clear communication with people in your home. So whether it's your roommates, or if this is your spouse, or if this is your kids or your relatives, talk to them really kind of between the eyes about this is what I can do, this is what I cannot do. Clear communication is going to help you keep from having some stress in regards to feeling like you have to balance it all by yourself. Good luck, Leo. We have Virgo and Virgo rising. Obviously, this is important for you, my Virgos, because you're ruled by Mercury. So Mercury will be moving into your 3rd house, which is Scorpio, and Mercury rules you as well as your career and your reputation. So having Mercury go into the 3rd house means that there's going to be more action there for you this month. 3rd house can be moving, road trips, it can be vehicles, communication, learning, siblings, and you're going to see a lot of action between Mercury and Mars this month, and like really going into next month. So what does that tell me? Basically, it means that you might feel like your mind is like working on overtime. You're kind of maybe racing around. Maybe there's a sense of realizing, oh, I have to move, or I have to change how I'm communicating or how I'm driving. There can be a sense of impulsiveness that can kind of be coming up for you as well. And, the name of the game is change because of Mars's connection to your 8th house. So it's about how you look at communicating differently, or how you look at thinking about things differently, and learning to maybe let go of needing to feel like things are a crisis. It's interesting that you have the North Node in your 8th house, which is about change, and then you've got Mercury and Mars and the Sun in the 3rd house. So you're like, okay, this change is happening. How do I process it? How do I deal with it? And for many of you guys, it's financial stuff because the North Node is in your 8th house. So I've heard from a number of Virgo risings that are like, I found out that I have to move. They're selling my rental, or I got a big tax bill. I don't know how to handle this. And so you guys are getting news about things that are changing, and you're trying to figure out how to navigate that change. My advice is come up with something you can be doing regularly to help you kind of deal with some of this mental stress. Go for a walk, ride a bike. Scorpio in the 3rd house is like wonderful for divination, working with a pendulum or tarot card, something that you can put in your hands that you can ask questions to kind of help give you some guidance quickly to have a better understanding of which path might be best. But also this is about maybe working on being more receptive of change and kind of going with the motion of change and letting that guide you. And also all of the stuff trining Saturn in your 7th, I think is also putting an emphasis on learning how to talk to other people and asking other people for their advice, their support, or how to navigate what you're going through. Good luck. We've got Libra and Libra rising. You will be experiencing Mercury entering into Scorpio. It'll be in your 2nd house. All right, so my Libras, Mercury is connected to your 12th house of deep subconscious things that are hidden or spiritual, self-undoing as well. And then we've got the 9th house, which deals with education, belief, travel, and philosophy. So we've got, Mercury in your 2nd house. So this is about systems revolving around what you possess, what you own. It can also be about your finances. Obviously, this is a very strong financial period for you, Libra. Sun, Mercury, Mars in the 2nd house is kind of like wheeling and dealing and doing business or focusing on what you're buying or your spending power. So there's a lot of financial things coming up for you. I do think that really the lesson here is about kind of saying, okay, is there such thing as too much of a good thing? I think that can be happening for you this month, especially coming off of this eclipse that you're going to have in your 8th house that is going to be featuring, your chart ruler. So Venus being in the 12th house. There's a lot to gain this month, and I think that the gains that you might have may come through other people. So you might just notice that you're getting gifts or benefits or bonuses or things like that. But it could also be inheritances or refunds or tax-related things or a partner that gets a chunk of change. And then the conversation is like, okay, what do we do with it? Because Mars happens to be in this house as well. Don't get lost in things. I guess that's my advice, because Mercury is the ruler of your 12th house. Some of you guys might be trying to figure out how to make changes in payment systems, banking, institutional things. You might switch banks or payment processors, or you might be doing business with people in foreign lands. But yeah, be mindful of your spending habits here, Libra, because all those planets with Mars make me feel like there's a lot of spending, and that eclipse in the 8th house could be something due. Good luck. We got Scorpio and Scorpio rising. How you guys doing? So, if you guys have saw my eclipse video and the other videos I did this last week, I talk about just how many planets are moving into your sign. Gotta love Sun or Mars transits through the 1st house. That is very self-motivating, I think. It also is about taking action. It's also about quick movement. And I think of like the Sun and Mars in the 1st house being maybe moving the body, but I think Mercury is about tapping into your 8th house and maybe knowing where or how to make changes, right? You've got a huge focus in your 1st house of the body, and Mars rules the North Node in your 6th, which does have to deal with habits and health and things revolving around your routines. So I could definitely see a lot of Scorpios being like, I'm going to change something about my habit or my lifestyle. I'm going to change something about how I communicate, how I work, where I work, what schedule I'm working, where I'm working out. Something like this is like kind of coming up for you. And as these planets are all coming into conjunction, and we see this eclipse in your 7th, it is all going to oppose Jupiter, okay, which is the ruler of your 5th. And for me, I guess Sag as well, you might find yourself in a situation, Scorpio, where you're going back and forth with somebody about what your values are, and they might differ from another person's. And it can be about how to invest, what you love, what you're hoping to participate in, what it is that you value. And you may find that there can be like a stark difference of opinion between you and another person. So the 7th house could be a client, it could be a spouse, it could be a romantic partner. And this full moon that's coming up in your 7th house is definitely going to bring lots of themes about completions of cycles and relationships. So I could see some of you guys kind of realizing that you're growing apart from some people. I could see some of you guys really acting out with the Sun, Mercury, Mars in your sign. You have to be very, very careful and very aware of your behavior in the next week or two, because there is such a strong, I need to change this thing within myself, that it can be projected onto other people, and other people may not necessarily respond well to that. So be mindful of your words. You want to make change happen. Awesome. Do it. Maybe, be super focused on your goals, and be mindful that you can include other people in this. Just don't feel like you have to kind of push that upon them, because you're in your season right now. Like, you're playing with home field advantage with all these planets in your sign, and it's almost like you thrive in this environment where you're like, yeah, nothing's working, let's just burn it all to the ground and start over. But like, other people don't work that way. And the oppositions to Taurus, you might find that there are some people that are like, no, I cannot, no, I'm not ready to go yet. So do not drag your heels and wait for those people. Keep things moving. Good luck. We have Sag and Sag rising. You're going to experience Mercury going into Scorpio in your natal 12th house. Mercury rules your 7th house of relationships and your 10th house of career. Okay, my Saggies, how are you doing? Lots of planets going through your 12th house. It's going to feel like there are things that you're just like, I'm either going to get angry or I'm going to let this go. It's going to be one of the two. Okay, so when Mercury goes through the 12th house, take note of your dreams, pay attention to your intuitive hunches, really listen to your higher self, find ways to be able to kind of like check in with spirit. Maybe consider getting a reading. Mercury in the 12th house is a great time to do that. It'll help give you guidance because of the connection to the 10th house, but there are things that are filtering out, cycling out, that are completing, that either do with your career, your status, and your title, or they deal with your relationships to other people. Now, these other people could be a sibling, right? Gemini in the 7th. It could be a neighbor. It could be a friend. It could be a coworker, but something's going on here. And as Mercury and Mars are coming into conjunction, you're going to see something that's being revealed to you that's either about a relationship or your work that you didn't know before. And you're going to be like, oh, I didn't know this thing was going on. The sun's going to shine a light on it and you're going to become aware of it. There can be a sense of feeling a little restless and like this feeling that there's all these subconscious fears and things going on. And Scorpio in the 12th house can be extremely intense because there can be some like volatile feelings that can come up right before you break free. Remember, what Sag teaches Scorpio is that you have to trust the process, right? Trust the process. So if something's falling apart, trust that it's meant to fall apart, because Sagittarius is that bridge to, okay, you know, you took the leap of faith. It wasn't that bad. It was scary in the moment, but look where you are now. Aren't you glad you got on the roller coaster of life? So trust the process right now. Whatever is kind of winding down or whatever is being revealed to you, you may have to kind of sit with, on your own for a little bit to kind of process, or symbolism might come to you in a therapy session or in a healing session or in a hypnosis session. Like if you can't get out of your own way with some of your habits, doing the work in an abstract or kind of subconscious way is probably the better way to kind of navigate this. Good luck. For Capricorn and Capricorn rising, you will be experiencing Mercury going into Scorpio. This will be in your natal 11th house. Mercury is connected to travel, belief, philosophy. It also has to do with scheduling and your habits and your daily routine. But when Mercury goes into the 11th house and Mars and the Sun are there, it's a very social time, like connecting with people maybe you haven't connected with in a while, talking to them, visiting with them, seeing them. This is also potentially about powerful connections that you can have with people in other places. Maybe it's about making the time for it. Maybe it's about work events, social events that can, give you the opportunity to do both. The 11th house is also about your dreams and your wishes. So I like that you're having an eclipse in your 5th house of fun. Maybe it's made possible because of the people who you surround yourself with. You might find that you're surrounding yourself with people who can be, truth tellers and exciting and giving you all kinds of information. But you may also find that there are some, friends that are giving you kind of the creeps, or some friends that are kind of rowdy, or you're realizing like, wait a second, hold up, like maybe this is like not the kind of group that I want to be hanging out with. Keep in mind that Mars rules the North Node, and North Node is moving through an angular house for you. So I wonder if like your goals revolving around your home and where you're living are changing. I wonder if friends are trying to convince you to move or change residence or move in with them, or maybe you go and visit someone and they're like, you should move. And you're like, actually, I think I could move. That might come up. But this can also be about, friends that are maybe going through some challenges or some strife. They might be in another place locationally. So there could be some phone calls that you're getting from somebody and kind of talking to them through whatever they got going on. Obviously, the trines that you're going to experience to Saturn this month, this week, is going to be wonderful because it's almost giving you the opportunity to kind of like be the person giving the sagely advice. So I could see like the connections to Saturn is, you texting somebody and giving them some thoughts on how to navigate a situation, or picking up the phone or writing them, a message or an email, and like the back and forth that you have where you're able to give or receive support. I like that. Good luck. All right, so we've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. you're going to be having Mercury go into Scorpio. This will be in your natal 10th house of career and professional life and reputation. Mercury has connections to your 8th house of joint resources and other people. It also has connections to your 8th house of children, creativity, and romance. I don't know. I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is like big boss energy for Aquarians. So obviously, Sun and Mercury in the 10th house is a very powerful time to just be very out there when it comes to your relationships, your alliances, your professional life, your clients, like who you're working with and collaborating with. But also, I see Mars being there where this is like some very dedicated, motivating, very holding your own, also very competitive kind of nature out in the workspace. So I could definitely see you being somebody who's like moving and shaking and trying to make a name for yourself. Obviously, this can also bring some energy where you're really bossing up in one way or another, you know, when it comes to making changes with your career, or maybe making changes with relationships or creative projects or children, trying to figure out what really makes you happy. I think this is really tapping into also the in conjunct to the North Node is like learning to voice what's not working and like where you want to make a change. And I think this is important because, you know, Pluto is just inching its way back into your sign. So maybe this is like the season where you start to kind of realize like, okay, something's got to change and I need to start speaking up. And you'll be embracing that as we go through the next couple of months. But for the most part, busy work-wise, lots of meetings, opportunities to connect with people, getting some work done. And I think there may be a lot of talking to other people about budgeting and resources, and trying to also have some fun with work as well, because Mercury's connection to the 5th makes me feel like it's about taking chances at work and maybe, you know, being more creative and seeing if you can make some of these changes. It's very likely with some of the trines to Saturn that you're going to experience that it may pay off, that hard work will pay off. Saturn's about to go direct, so you're going to start to realize in this Scorpio season that hard work, dedication, and knowing your worth is the key to success. And likely all the work that's kind of playing out is going to give you the opportunity to really start to financially see that reward. Good luck. And we've got Pisces and Pisces rising. What's going on, guys? You will have Mercury entering into Scorpio in your 9th house. Mercury rules your 7th house of relationships and your 4th house of home and family and the past. All right, so first things first, Scorpio is a sister sign. So there is like a lot of support that's coming, especially with the trines to Saturn in your 1st house. I do feel like there is a sense of you getting to choose whether or not you believe that there is like a bigger plan for you, okay? A lot of it requires faith and belief. You know that Saturn in your sign is about your boundaries, your commitments, your growth, your maturity, and it's also about making your vision a reality. So with the 9th house activation with Mercury, this might be things that you learn, places you travel, teachers you connect to, things you study that help kind of change your perspective or maybe help you cement your belief system, right? Saturn and Pisces. Now, Mercury deals with relationships. So, you know, traveling with a partner, traveling and meeting somebody, you know, celebrations, ceremonies is the 9th house with partners. I do feel like with Mars being there, there is a sense of investing more either in education, beliefs, or travel. And I'm also looking at some of the oppositions that are going to be made to Jupiter, which is your traditional ruler. So it does look like, you know, traveling or education or a bit of back and forth about faith or belief is going to be a huge theme this month. And if anything, I think Scorpio, you know, the Mercury and Scorpio transit is learning how to kind of talk about change and how to embrace change, and that maybe the plans have changed, but you're like, I'm going to go with it because clearly this is what was meant to happen. And I'm not going to kind of question whatever the divine plan is for me. I'm just going to kind of trust in the fact that, you know, I'm on the path. It can be hard, but remember that Saturn is about your visions and it's also about your goals. So as long as you're strongly tied to that and you have like a practice, a faith practice, a religious practice, something, you know, with all these planets in the 9th house, if you don't, you might go looking for it throughout these next few weeks. and align with a book or somebody who's giving a lecture or somebody who's teaching something that can help you really stay steadfast when it comes to really committing to your dreams and making them a reality. The key here is to probably be willing to get out of the past, because Mercury's connection to the 4th, and maybe move, get out of the house, make a change, you know, maybe entertain the idea of traveling or relocating, and that might be a piece of the puzzle that's going to help give you like a different perspective, right? All right, well, that is the week ahead for you guys. Also, Mercury in Scorpio. I think I talk about that in the horoscopes. I could be wrong, but I don't know. Check the horoscopes out. I also just put out the horoscopes for November. So if you guys haven't seen that, you can check that out. I take you through the 12 signs. I will be back here on Tuesday. I'm not even sure what we're going to talk about yet, but don't worry about that. You guys worry about this week. Remember, like I said, don't be afraid to kind of shine a light on some of these Scorpio things in your chart. Hopefully this inspires you to create change and want to talk about this stuff so we can really kind of move through it. As always, thank you guys for your likes, comments, your shares, your support. Please, please, please leave me a comment below. Let me know. Is this your first time seeing my channel? If so, drop me a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. But also, how are you feeling with these energies? How are you guys feeling about this eclipse? I know that we are kind of in between right now, so there can still be some eclipse things happening from the last one. But I'd love to hear your guys' hot take on your thoughts. With that being said, I'm going to let you guys go. Please enjoy the rest of your Sunday, the rest of your weekend, and I will see you guys all back here on Tuesday. Take care.